So I have this tradition that every time I fly back from Israel to the US, I buy a couple of books in Stimatsky in the airport. And I came back on Sunday, got tested, don't worry, and I'm vaccinated. And as I'm going through Stimatsky, I see this book by Micha Goodman. And I've read a lot of Micha Goodman's previous work. And he's one of the, what I would consider the most prolific, thoughtful, interesting thinker who came out of Israel. Probably more than Noah Harari, in my opinion. And I'm like, hey, what the hell is this book? When did it come out? And then the book came out 4 weeks ago. I got it, finished it through the 15-hour bus drive, landed and shot an email to Bill and Nate saying, I think this is something that will interest lots of people. Goodman is exploring what he called is the broken attention. How broken attention span, or the breaking of the human attention span, is causing two crises in human society: a political crisis of tribalism and a psychological crisis of depression. And what I loved about the book is how he's able to connect a lot of threads and discussions that we've seen in a lot of different places. And he admits it, that, you know, very few things in here are his original ideas. What's original in the book is how he's connecting the dots and then outlining different ways in which society can deal with it. So I'm going to try in about 45 minutes to summarize key points from the book. It is not available in English, it's only in Hebrew right now. If you like it, the credit goes to Goodman. If there are any mistakes, corrections, something is horrible, it's my fault. And I'm probably gonna do it injustice by missing a lot of the interesting points and tidbits he's bringing in. But let me try, and hopefully that will be useful. So Goodman starts with a story about, you know, we are ordered to study the Torah. But what do? We study the Talmud. What's happened all along is people studying the Talmud. But what does it mean to study the Talmud? You're not studying what to do, you're studying the arguments between this side and the other side. You're supposed to follow one side, but you study the arguments. And when you think about it, this is like taking a nice liberal Democrat and forcing them to study a conservative Republican. They can be a Democrat, but you're forced to study both sides. And this is the foundation that he says, you know, keep it in mind in terms of a process, a social process for a community on how to see both sides. That's the foundation. Now, what do we see in society today? I think I don't have to tell you, but I'll repeat some of the things he's saying. 1994, 1/3 of the people liked the left side, 1/3 of the people on the right liked the people on the left, 1/3 liked the opposite way. We go back 20 years later, only 10% from the left like people on the right, and vice versa. Another example he brings is if people had to grade their emotion on how they feel toward people with different political views, if in 95 the average, you know, between 0 that you hate and 100 that you really like, the average, and this is a research that he's quoting, 95 was 40, 2015, 7. Real hatred between both sides. The society has broken into real camps with real hatred between them. So what's causing that? And the third thing that people tend to say, you know, maybe it's the third got some bad idea, the right got some bad idea. You know, we tend to think about their ideas are bad, their ideas are wrong, but we are seeing the same phenomena in a lot of other countries, in Israel, in Brazil, in Europe. So the breaking of the society doesn't have to do with something specific in the US, with the left having some ideas or the right having some ideas, but it's a global movement. And if it's a global movement, this is probably not about a specific idea, but he's saying, and he's quoting here a researcher called Marshall McLuhan, a Canadian, saying the problem is the medium in which ideas are conveyed, not the ideas themselves. And so if we are starting to think about the medium, and here I'm going to rearrange a little bit the discussion from him. Let's think about the public square, which used to be where people exchange ideas. It's the common concept in liberal societies. But there's no public square anymore, it's all digital. And if you can say, well, it's a public digital square. Well, it's not a public digital square, it's a private digital square. And the industry that's driving this digital square is mostly monetized by advertisement. Advertisement is about grabbing your attention. And that's where it's starting to get interesting. Side comment that I'll just, not related to him, but I wanted to make him. One of the most interesting comments I had while being in Israel was from my sister, telling me that the most meaningful, fun, fulfilling experiences she's had in the last 18 months have been going to demonstrations in Israel in the public square, meeting the people, interacting with them. The physical experience with the people made a huge difference for her. So, it's not public, it's private, and it's based on advertisement. Now, how big is this industry that captures your attention, our attention? End up that there is a research in Colombia called Tim Wu, and researching it, and he calls it the attention economy. And the amazing thing is, it's much bigger than the oil industry. We have a resource here, our attention, that people didn't pay attention to it, didn't think it's valuable, but is actually extremely valuable to capture. So next time when you're sitting online and say, I'll just check one thing in Facebook, and it takes you 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and you have no idea how the time went, realize it's not you that's necessarily failing. You are going against 1,000 of the best engineers in Facebook thinking how to capture your attention, because your attention is money. And to do it, it's going to build on any human weakness that you can find. Everything from our obsession and curiosity about what's new. You know, the small beep. Oh, something is on the phone. What is it? What's the potential? And the thirst for new and understanding, hey, something good might be happening. I need to find out what it is. We know this feeling, but that's how they pull attention from us. The second part is, in psychology, there's something called confirmation bias. What do we like seeing? We like seeing more things that correspond to what we already know, not necessarily things that conflict with what we know. Now, if I'm sitting there and programming an algorithm that says, if somebody sees something, we'll show him more of what it is because you want to capture their attention. This confirmation bias is going to lock you into more and more things of what you have already seen. And And that's getting really interesting for a couple of reasons. Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel-winning researcher in economic behavior, have wrote about how the feeling that something is familiar and the feeling that something is correct are very similar feelings. And the more you repeat something to somebody, make it more familiar to him, the more they feel it is correct. Now, what does it mean? It's much easier to come up with lies to capture attention than it is with truth. Truth has constraints. You have to say what's true. If you lie, you can come up with whatever it is, and it will capture attention because you can make it interesting and sexy and exciting and feeling and all of those emotions. You're not constrained. So it's an opportunity that is inherently more encouraging for lies to be distributed than for truth. Truth is complicated, hard. Lies, hey, viral, get them all across, we get your attention, we make money. The other emotions that's really being taken advantage of is rage. Because if you're thinking what emotions are causing people and grabbing people's attention, and which one of the human collections of emotion is the one that's most viral, it's rage and anger. So the more content over there that are causing rage and anger, you'll end up staying more on the content. You put those things together, your attention is worth money, confirmation bias, I want to see lots of this, you get into echo chambers, rage, lies, and you're getting to the point that you have an amazing new medium, but it's pulling people into tribes inherently through the mediums and the role of the mediums. And that's what we call the political crisis of the new media. Well, let's put the political crisis aside and try to talk about what we call the psychological crisis. In 2017, there was a study published in the Atlantic. Ends up that every year for whatever, 20 years, something like this, in the US, 500,000 teens are going through a survey that asks them about their anxiety level, depression levels, have they been thinking about suicide, and so on. After 2011, the numbers are pretty much stable. A little bit up, a little bit down, but they stay the same for 2011. Starting 2011, we are seeing a 58% rise in suicidal thoughts among young females, 30% increase in depression thoughts among youth. Something happened. This survey is about youth, but we can also think about other age groups, that people are more depressed. We can go and say, you know, it's the US. Well, they've done similar research in Israel, same thing. Other countries, same thing. Again, this is not a specific problem in the US. This is a global problem. So somebody will go and say, oh yeah, you know, for 2008, the economic crisis, that's what's causing people to be depressed. Well, if that was the case, you will see the curve going back down after, but it's not, it keeps on rising. Something else happened in 2011 that's causing the increase of anxiety and depression within society. And actually the majority of the book is much more on the psychological. There are like 100 pages on it. So it's going to be really hard for me to try to summarize it, but I'll try. What else do we know? 2007, iPhone. Well, first few years, it's starting to build in volume. The adults use it. 2009, 2010, they decide they need a new model, they'll give it to their kids. And really you start seeing iPhone and smartphones within teens. You see a much more increased usage of Facebook and Instagram. And as we said, we see a lot of people less happy. And he is pointing out what he would say are 4 reasons. One is what he called the boredom paradox. A study by Dan Gilbert from Harvard took a couple thousand people and randomly through the day would send them a text that says, here are 3 questions. What are you doing? What are you thinking about? How happy are you? The result of this interesting study, what makes people the happiest? It's when they think about what they are doing. It's where attention is at the now and what they are doing. And that's really interesting because we know people are grabbing our attention. He then tells a very interesting story that he called the, wait, where is it? Wait, sorry, oh, I'll read it. So yeah, let's be happy, focus on the now, that's great, or that's all I need to do. But guess what, it's really hard to focus on the now. And there are a couple of reasons. Society, first of all, Western capitalistic society, the now is a tool toward achievement. It's not a goal on its own. We're not, most of us are looking, what am I doing towards something? Not so much thinking, let me focus on what I am, where I am. This is much more of a Buddhist, Eastern way of thinking. The second thing is, another study that he's mentioning, put people in a room and says, they want to take there's a small electric shock in here. They want to take it, and obviously they all said no. Now you put them in a closed room, and they have nothing else to do, the machine for the electric shock was over. Guess what? Quite a few people, after half an hour, 2 hours, were so bored out of their mind, they started getting electric shocks. Being on their own is not necessarily something we know how to do. And the story that he's telling here is about a psychiatrist called Mark Epstein, who attended one of those yoga 8-day retreats that you're supposed to be quiet the whole time. And you have lunch breaks and breakfast and dinner. And the breakfast one day, Mark was sitting there and putting some butter on his beautiful toast and really focusing on it, eating and really enjoying it. And he was in anticipation the whole day. I really want this toast. This was so good. Gets to dinner, gets the toast, eating it, really putting everything, focusing on it, enjoying every minute. And then he says, you know, I'm going to get one more toast. So he's going to get one more toast and suddenly realized, gee, I have so much laundry to do. My wife is going to be hell to me. I really need to stop by the laundry machine and get it. And suddenly he's looking, and where is his second toast? And he's suddenly going, who ate my toast? And he's realizing he ate it. But he did not experience any of that feeling because he wasn't there. And then he said, where the hell did my life go? Because he has not lived in the moment. It's always been a goal to do something else. So being able to keep our attention, yes, it might be boring, but this is a fundamental part of human psychology and our ability to be content and happy. And this has also been confirmed with different MRI studies and studies on mindfulness and so on. So that's what he called the boredom paradox. So, related to it is the fear of missing out. I need to multitask because I want to be able to do this and this. I can't miss any of those opportunities. And guess what? You're so much multitasking that you're missing both things. And then he quotes different research that shows that our ability to multitask or do problems while multitasking, it shows like an IQ level of 15 lower. People, just by putting the phone on a table in front of them, are able to solve problems less efficiently than if the phone was not in the room. I'm doing it in justice, much more details in the book and much more colorful in the book, but you get the point. The second paradox he's talking about is a bit also on the loneliness paradox, the need to be able to know, to be with ourselves, but at the same time being able to have rich connection with other people, body language, 3-dimension, full face, tone of voice. These are rich connections. That's what human needs. If you think about it, what's the most strict punishment in the legal system? Putting death sentence apart. Solitary confinement. So the need for human connection is a significant human need that needs to be fulfilled. The third paradox goes to the Jewish saying of Miu Ashir, Sameach Bechelko. Who's rich? He who is content. Now, Chelko means in his portion, not a full portion, but his portion. Now, what happens with social media? Couple of things. First of all, you always get to see other people's Chelkam. And because fairness in human psychology always builds about comparing yourself to others, that's why the Chelko is so important, to teach you to be content with what you have. There's an underlying feeling that the more you go and see how other people are doing better than you, the less content you will be. It's going to be harder and harder to be Sameach Bechelkecha. The other part that comes with technology is multiple choices. You can say choice is great, but choice, and there's lots of research showing how when you have too many choices, you're much more frustrated because you're not sure you made the right choice. And you're always going like, well, maybe I should have taken this and this. Well, you still have limited time. You have to pick one. So by showing you more and more choices, you feel less and less happy. One interesting example he gives is how people in a wonderful, nice date they set up with Tinder are still browsing Tinder to see other dates that they could have been. Not that they're not happy with the date, but suddenly they have the option of seeing all of those other things. And that inherently makes their experience less fulfilling. So if you want to summarize the psychology crisis, reduced attention, we are connected all the time, but we are still lonely. And we don't know how to handle loneliness because we are used to Facebook and others grabbing every single unused minute of our life. So the ability to deal with loneliness have degraded. And Sameach Bechelko, it's much, much harder to be Sameach Bechelkecha when you continuously see Chelkam of other people and how other people, and you have multiple choices. So that's the psychological crisis. The next part is the solutions. But one thing that is available from Goodman online is a lecture that he gave in English. Wait, is it in English or Hebrew? I'm not sure. Actually, no, it's in Hebrew. But there is an annual lecture series for one of the most famed commando leaders who died about 10 years ago in a special operation in Gaza, Morano. And now they're trying to bring really interesting speakers. And he talked about the psychological crisis. This was last year, 2020. And if you speak Hebrew, it's recommended. I can send a link later on, it's on YouTube. But the interesting thing he said in the end is technology is a great servant, but horrible master. And that touches on your point. It's an amazing tool. And in the beginning of the book, he's making very clear, he's not against technology. There's no way to stop technology. It's the most amazing tool. He personally had a handicap that he wouldn't be able to write, wouldn't be able to be himself if it wasn't for technology. The question is, what do we do? We know that there is a crisis. We know that it was called through technology and business. What do we do now? And what I love about Goodman is that in each one of his books, he's not going to leave you like most academics do with, look what an amazing problem it is. Hold on. He actually tries to face and say, here are different ways we can do to solve it, which is not easy. Side comments. His previous book called my mind. One book is about secular and religious Israelis and how can the society live together. The other one is called Milkud 67, which about the Palestinian Jewish conflict.
Catch 67.
Catch 67, and this book is in English. So you can find it on the book. The interesting part, he's actually outlining, he says, forget about peace. We're not going to see peace. And I tend to agree with him. But we absolutely need to reduce the friction. The interesting thing about it is when the book came out, this member of parliament who just barely made it, or I think he might not even have made it at the time, wrote a really nice review of the book saying, you know, I might not agree with everything in the book, but this is probably the most thoughtful, interesting commentary on the crisis and what we can do in Israel. This member of Knesset is Bennett. He's considered, so Goodman is considered to be kind of the Bennett whisperer in terms of being his thought leadership on, as we have now discovered, not just the political and the religious crisis, but on other topics. The other interesting thing when I read the book was going and reading the thank you. The one that he said had influenced page by page of the book, and that's his quote, is no other than Lapid, that he considers to be the most thoughtful observant of Israeli society as well as global society. So putting those two aside, I thought that was interesting. Now, what do we do? If we think back about the Industrial Revolution, you know, when it happened, life was not that good. Polluted rivers, working people to death, no minimum wage, abusing the proletariat. It took many, many years to try to fix society and fix the damage that came out of it, fix the health regulations, come up with different rules around this, the environment, which we still far from having enough, building the modern social safety net. Revolutions and technology revolution happen, they have negative impact, and this negative impact can be addressed. So this is not, let's raise our hands, give up. We can fix the problem. And Look how many people we know that are running outside and working out. That was not the case in the 80s. Cultural can change behavior. Smoking. Don't take something and say, let's just give up. So how do you solve it? And he's saying the solution needs to come on 3 levels: regulatory, cultural, and technology. On the regulation, he's giving the example of sitting down with a friend who has a restaurant, and the friend telling, hey, the inspector stopping by and they found me not fulfilling some rule and they shut down my restaurant. And why I felt sorry for the friend, he was going like, I'm feeling good that there is regulation and things are being checked to verify that the right things are done. Well, guess what? There are no regulation when it comes to any of the social media, no meaningful regulations around the new topics. So just like we had regulations come up after the Industrial Revolution, there is an absolutely need for regulation around social media. The specific areas he's talking around is privacy, disinformation, and media companies. The 2 thoughts that crossed my mind as I was reading it was one way to alter regulatory-wise behavior is not just saying what's allowed and not allowed, is through taxation. What you tax as a government affects what people do, how companies behave. So the topic of how do you tax the industry, the social media industry, is a fascinating topic that I know I'm going to get back home on tomorrow and call one of our friends that taxation is her expertise. The second part is we keep on saying, free speech. But free speech is regulated very differently between the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Germany. What are the things around free speech that might have to be tweaked? Preserving free speech, but also realizing that unconstrained free speech, the way it is in the US, has some damage associated with it, and we might want to switch to a model in one of the other countries. Don't know, but I wanted to raise it. The second part he's talking about solution is cultural empowerment. Just like the running, the smoking, culturally you're aware of the importance of things change. One of the things he started doing was going and doing meditation. And now we'll finish this and my wife will say, okay, maybe it's time you sign up for some meditation. And maybe I will. But there is a way of changing the behavior by strengthening normal cultural, setting up cultural norms. And by saying, being in the moment is actually important and focusing on it will start making a difference to cultural changes. The third part he's talking about is technology liberating technology, what he's calling TLT. And there is more and more technologists that are like myself that are saying, okay, what can we do in technology to solve that problem? He is mentioning an initiative he's involved with a company that can basically block down Wi-Fi and cellular in a specific room. So suddenly, everybody who goes into this room is connected and in the moment. The challenge that comes with technology is that it costs money. So they immediately said, okay, who's going to pay for it? And at least in this case, he's saying, well, employees will pay for it because of increased productivity. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is I think for the technology, is that you are facing very large amount of dollars on the other side. So there's a lot of interesting ideas, but how do you deal with the monetary weight that existing players have? Discussions about how media companies, Facebook and so, can show you fact checking is something I personally wrote on. He's talking about the topic of showing opposite opinion as an integral part of a platform offering. I'm personally intrigued with a concept that he's not talking about, which I call screenless font. So building a font that actually doesn't have a screen, but still provide the services for you. So it has no way of grabbing your attention, but that's a personal interest. So these are the three areas he's saying society needs to move to address those two crises. Summary. The two dimensions of human life within a society, the individual one and the community one, are badly damaged right now. And we need to heal speech within a community, and we need to heal silence within the individual life. That's a lot of his writing style, is building of parallels in short sentences, which makes him very easy to absorb. Again, side comment. Bring back the Talmudic way of understanding the other side, even though there is a set of rules. Bring back into Western society a bit of the Buddhistic idea of appreciating silence. Tech brought our attention, and we need to bring it back. It's not impossible. Tech is great, but we need to be aware of the problem and then take full force to change it, because this is the biggest threat to society that we know. And that's basically the book.